Hello everyone, this is T.D. Bob. Today we're here to talk about what it was like on the Prince tour. So let me set the stage. This was back about 1984. MTV was brand new. At the time, the Jacksons and Prince were having tour times which coincided or competed, whichever way you care to look at it. Now, Michael Jackson was putting a lot of video out on MTV, and Prince wasn't working the MTV angle as hard since he had a movie out that was the same name of his tour, Purple Rain. So at the same time, two wildly popular tours were going out, and they went out in two different formats. Prince decided he was going to play coliseums, roughly 20,000 seat buildings, and just let it sell out for how many days. In Los Angeles, I think we played the Forum for 4 days and then moved down to Long Beach Convention Center for another 6 or 7 days. We played New York for a week out at Nassau Coliseum and also downtown at the Garden. And most of the dates on that tour were sold out from 5 to 7 days. So that's where the volume came from on the Prince tour, and it was out about a year. Now, as opposed to that, the Jackson tour did a lot of stadiums. That meant fewer shows per week, and it was a major show each time, something in the 40 to 80,000 range. The rehearsals for the Prince tour were held in Minnesota, which of course is where Prince is from, and it was in St. Paul at the Civic Center. And it was a very snowy December when the tour started, and we were basically snowed in at the St. Paul Hotel during the rehearsals. We started out with several shows at the Civic Center there and moved down to Chicago. Now, one of the first things that struck me when I started work there was this was incredibly businesslike. I mean, I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And for those of you that are not familiar with that, it basically is something you sign that says you won't take any pictures or give out any information or make any recordings or basically anything that might give away some of what the tour would consider proprietary information. I've never before or since had to sign one, but that's the reason there's not a whole lot of pictures available, except the ones that are controlled by Prince's press people at the time. I never saw a crew person with a camera. I took a few shots that were not Showtime shots while I was there that I'll be showing you. But as far as artist shots, they were just about as easy to get as finding some chicken teeth. There was usually tours have maybe one or two security guys, like Motley had Fred and George, but Prince had a group of huge, and I'm not talking huge, I'm talking unbelievably huge guys. There were about a dozen of them, and they were called the Purple Gang. And I mean, I'm not that big. I'm 6'2" and weighed about 200 pounds at the time. I felt like a midget compared to those guys. They were like a curtain of flesh. And there was also one guy that was in charge of his personal security who was replaced because it seems that he was exaggerating the threat and trying to make himself more valuable when in fact he was frightening Prince, and it was a good move, I think, because after that I saw Prince out shooting hoop and riding a bicycle several times, and he was always cordial and would nod, but he was a private person. He's not just a private person, a private musician. Not everybody knows how many startup musicians he helped, and the entire Paisley Park organization supported a number of artists that he discovered. Another thing they did, which was uncommon, was they had great concerns about riots or crowd control, even with the Purple Gang. And before the end of the show, Prince was actually in a van, which was parked directly behind the stage during the show. And that van would take off, and by the time the last note of the last song was sounded, Prince might be 5 or 10 miles away. But he was not there at the end of the show. Let's see. The whole tour, Sheila Estefan was the main opening act, and that made it easier for set changes and knowing what everything was every night for the guys that were doing the set changes when it went from the opening act to the main act. It was a 12-truck tour, and in 1980, it started at the end of 83, 84, and the first winter tour ever done was done by Heart in 83. So going out in the winter was a new thing. At one time, you went home sometime after Thanksgiving and you didn't go back to work until sometime after March when there was no ice, but after Heart pulled off a tour, everybody else decided to do it. So this was indeed a winter tour, and it was a pretty cold winter. I remember ice in Houston, Dallas, Shreveport, and Birmingham, Alabama, Memphis, Tennessee, and wind chills of 70 degrees below zero in Cincinnati, which led to 12 trucks freezing up, 8 trucks out of 12 trucks, engines freezing, although they were buttoned up and high idled. It was just too cold. So that was a whole lot of fun. Now, as you may know, each vendor, like the sound company or the light company or the lasers or rigging or wardrobe, these are like small departments in a larger business, and they work within the business and are supervised by a general production manager. There were 2 excellent gentlemen that were on the Prince tour who worked very well together, and often you'll hear somebody say, well, Supertramp's PA was just so great. Well, in most cases, it's not the band's equipment. The band rents the production equipment and only owns the band gear if they own that. So each one of these systems, the lighting or the sound or even the stage, comes with its own crew that travels with the band, and then those guys direct the stagehands setting the equipment up. Prince was the first rolling stage tour that I did, and in that rolling stage tour, the stage is assembled with the band gear and monitors on one end of the Coliseum, while the sound and lights are brought into place and pulled up in the ceiling where they're going to be for the show. Then the stage is rolled under, and it saves several hours of the production time because you can do more than one thing at a time that way. It's a good system, but it was a 12-truck tour, and it was one of the very earliest 12-truck tours. There were also wardrobe, lasers, lighting, trucks, buses, management, catering. Sometimes it was the venue catering, sometimes it was tour catering, rigging, accountancy, and it was a historical tour. It was setting records, even though the Jacksons were out. It didn't seem that it was as much of a distraction as something else a lot of people felt like they should do. Prince took splendid care of the crew. There were always 5-star hotels. There was always 5-star catering. If you wanted to leave your equipment somewhere to go out and do something, by golly, it just didn't matter. He would get some of the security guys could be called into play even if you were in a hotel or off day. It was very comfortable from the standpoint of the people who were in charge, knew exactly what they needed, and a lot of the owners and co-owners and big wheels of the production companies were also out on the tour. All in all, it was a real great tour. It ended in Miami, and that was a stadium show. Here's a few pictures that I'd like to show you. Of course, this is the Prince Pass, which you noticed at the beginning of this. We'll get rid of that. For some troubling reason, preview isn't opening. Now we've got it. Pardon that delay. This is a stage set that they're setting up at Miami. The lights are already in place and have been rigged and pulled up. There's a screen above here that you can't see because this is a tight shot of the stage. Some of the sound system at multiple levels, and they're assembling the barricade down here. Now this is the no-go zone for fans. Even if some dance band in a club had a real good time with bringing people on stage, this is a war zone down here. You don't want to try to climb in. You don't get confused and think the band wants you on stage. They don't. Strangely enough, the only words that Kirk, the bass player from Metallica, ever said to me was, "Throw that asshole off my stage," one night when somebody got through the barricade. So this is the no-go zone right here. All right, let's look at the next picture. Get rid of that. Bam. Now this is the backstage cross section here. Get rid of that border. Various ramps for getting up one level or another. Even got lights over here for the loadout, so everything, even after the show's over, they've got a lighting system in place. These are road cases that belong to the lighting company, the sound company, some of the opening act bands, and so forth. Sound gear up high. But this is Bedlam. People think, oh boy, I want to go backstage. Well, this isn't the backstage you want to be in. Maybe if you're special, you may let you up on the stage area, but this is a crazy zone. This is a fall down and hurt yourself zone. Alrighty, let's look at the next one. Now, to give you an idea of how big a show this is, or was, these are the van trailers that brought the show in. Now, there are also some flatbed trucks that brought the stage in. So this looks like some kind of truck stop or something. And lastly, this is how the show looked from out front. The video screen is still going up. Sound equipment, barricades almost in place. This is the house sound and lighting riser. Lighting is probably here, sound is probably here, and spotlights are usually up here. I honestly don't remember if that was the way it was stacked or not, but I believe that was the case. If I was a lighting director, I would have wanted to be on the higher riser to get a better look at the stage. Okay, well those are my memories about Prince. I hope you enjoyed it. It was, felt like being a piece of history. I've still got a lot of friends left over, and when Prince died, it was a shock to all of us. As far as having any indication when I worked around him that he had any drug use whatsoever, I didn't see it. He seemed alert and sharp always. I can't speak to what levels of pain he may have experienced later in life. I have no idea and won't venture an opinion. It's a great loss to all of us. I know, as well as a performer, he was quite an accomplished guitarist and could play darn near everything else too. He was one of the first after the Wilsons to have a number of ladies in the band and very always competent musicians. My hat's off to the man, and I appreciate your watching, listening, and hope you enjoyed it. TD Bob, over and out.